Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, let me express my sincere apologies for not being able to attend the colloquium in person. This week, for me, was a very realistic representation of how constantly and rapidly the days of working mom are changing and evolving. And even though I'm really sorry that I cannot be there and meet you in person, it was my absolute pleasure to have been asked by the Iliade Institute to have an intervention on such an important topic, which is the question of work and the role of working women and working mothers like myself. Today, I want to explore the topic that has been crucial to the structure of our societies, yet remains largely invisible to many. This is women's work, specifically the unpaid labor that women have contributed to European society throughout the history. In this speech, I would like to examine how women's contributions, particularly in the realms of a household like childcare, charity work, religious roles, have shaped the very foundation of European cultures. I will also explore the significance of the modern threadwife aesthetic that has emerged on platforms like TikTok and its very complex relationship to the post feminist era. Ultimately, I will conclude that the work women have historically performed can hardly be reduced to mere financial measurements because, in my opinion, it's invaluable. When we think about labor in society, our minds often turn to jobs in factories, offices, and retail establishments because these are the ones that provide an income, contribute to the GDP, and are clearly recognized as work. Yet many of the most foundational forms of labor are invisible, and these are the tasks that women have performed for centuries, often without any specific acknowledgement in the private sphere of their home. Household labor, which includes cleaning, cooking, laundry, organizing, tidying up, like 5 jobs at the same time, has historically been carried out primarily by women. But it's not just about the tasks themselves. This work is the engine that keeps societies functioning at the end of the day. Similarly, childcare. The caring and raising of the next generation has overwhelmingly been the responsibility of women, often to the exclusion of men in traditional roles. These women, whether working within the confines of a home or outside it, have shouldered an enormous burden. Yet, because this labor isn't compensated in the same way formal employment is, lots of the times it remains unrecognized and unfortunately undervalued. The economics of domestic labor are very complex, and even in modern economies, women continue to bear the brunt of household responsibilities despite their increased participation in the formal workforce. According to studies, women still spend more time on unpaid labor than men, even when both of them are working full time outside the home. Let me tell you a personal anecdote that I think narrates my argument very well. My mother is planning to attend her 30th high school reunion, and she told me that even though she was much looking forward to it, she's also very anxious about it and she might not go. And I asked her, but Mom, why wouldn't you want to go? And she said she was afraid that all of her former classmates have now fancy jobs and fancy titles. And she said, what will I tell them? What have I accomplished? And I looked at her and I said, Mom, you raised us. That's the biggest accomplishment one can ever do. And I think the only way to achieve a much needed mindset shift in this regard would be if we started seeing the real and behind the scenes work that goes into raising children, and if we started to understand the value it means to raise responsible adults who can then contribute to society later. One area where women's contributions have been significant, though often overlooked, is in the realm of charity work and volunteering. Throughout European history, women have been at the forefront of creating and maintaining charitable organizations, from religious orders who are providing for the poor and sick to community based networks designed to support the most vulnerable members of the society. In the Middle Ages, for instance, religious women played a critical role in running hospitals and schools, particularly in the Catholic tradition, which placed emphasis on care for the sick and the poor as a moral duty. The work they did often went unnoticed, but it had far reaching consequences. Women were not only responsible for the physical care of the ill, but they also engaged in efforts to combat broader societal issues like poverty or inequality. In many ways, this laid the groundwork for modern-day social welfare programs that we have. Women like Florence Nightingale, who revolutionized nursing during the Crimean War, or Mary Ward, who was instrumental in creating educational opportunities for girls and women, showed the deep roots of women's involvement in public service. These women did not receive the recognition or compensation they deserved during their lifetime, yet their contributions have had a lasting impact on the welfare of European societies. In recent years, there has been a curious resurgence of the threadwife aesthetic on social media, particularly on TikTok, and this trend portrays women embracing traditional gender roles, meaning caring for their home, supporting their husbands, and raising their children. While some view this as a return to old-fashioned values, others see it as a problematic embrace of gender equality. What's the truth? No one knows, but what the threadwife trend taps into is a nostalgia for a time where roles seemed clearer and women's place in the home was seen as both purposeful and dignified. The rise of the threadwife aesthetic reflects a post-feminist reaction that seeks to reclaim some of the values of family and domesticity. At the same time, we cannot dismiss the significant cultural value of women's domestic labor. This trend reveals a complex intersection of feminism, nostalgia, and the changing gender norms. It calls for a nuanced understanding of women's work where it is acknowledged not only for its economic value, but also for its cultural and emotional significance. Am I suggesting that all of us should move to the countryside, have some chicken, and bake our own sourdough bread? Maybe, I don't know, it might not be the reality for all of us. However, it is easily understandable why lots of women these days are choosing to gravitate towards this life. In conclusion, the work women have historically contributed to European societies cannot be reduced to mere financial value. From household duties to childcare to charity and religious contributions, women have played an essential role in maintaining the very fabric of our societies. Their labor has been invisible, often unacknowledged, and too often uncompensated, but it has been invaluable. The idea that women's contributions can be measured solely in financial terms does a disservice to the richness and depth of their roles throughout history. Women have built societies, nurtured future generations, and cared for the sick and needy. They have been the unseen hands that shaped our communities in which we live, and they continue to be integral to the well-being of families and societies today. As we move forward, it is crucial to remember that the worth of labor is not always found in the paycheck. Sometimes the most valuable work is the kind that sustains life, binds communities, and fosters care. Let us not forget the invisible labor of women, and let us celebrate it for the immeasurable value it brings to our lives and our societies. Thank you for your attention.